Ranveer Allahabadiya wrote, "What does law say about obscenity?" Assam police on Monday registered a complaint against Ranveer Allahabadiya, founder of the YouTube channel Beer Biceps, for the alleged obscene comments he made during the guest appearance on the YouTube show India's Got Latent. Comedian Samay Raina, the show's host, was also named in the complaint, which included charges of obscene acts under Section 296 of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023. Allahabadiya and Raina are currently under investigation by the Mumbai police. Section 294 of the BNS punishes those who sell, import, export, advertise, or profit from obscene books, paintings, figures, and other materials. It also punishes the display of obscene content in electronic form. The section describes obscene material as something which is lascivious or appeals to the prurient interest, meaning overly and excessively sexual, or which would tend to deprave and corrupt persons who are likely to read, see, or hear the matter contained or embodied in it. Violation of Section 294 can be punished with up to 2 years imprisonment and a fine of up to 5,000 for first-time offenders. In the event of a second or subsequent conviction, one can be slapped with prison sentence of up to 5 years and a fine of up to 10,000. Publishing or transmitting obscene material online can also be punished under Section 67 of the IT Act 2000. The definition of obscene material in the Act is identical to that provided under Section 294 of the BNS. However, it provides a comparatively more rigorous punishment, up to 3 years imprisonment and a fine up to 5 lakh for the first time offence. Second or subsequent conviction can lead to 5 years in prison and a fine of up to 10 lakh. Section 296 of the BNS, under which Allahabadiya and Raina have been charged, says whoever, to the annoyance of others, does any obscene act in any public place, or sings or recites, utters any obscene song, ballad, or words, or in or near any public place, shall be punished with imprisonment of up to 3 months, or fine up to 1,000. How have courts interpreted obscenity over the years? Post 1947, one of the most important rulings on obscenity laws involved the book Lady Charlotte's Letter, written in English novelist D.H. Lawrence. The book, which was first published in 1928 in Italy, was considered scandalous for the times given that it contained details of sexual encounters. In 1964, Supreme Court of India held that the book was obscene under Section 292 of the Indian Penal Code in Ranjit Udesi versus State of Maharashtra. The court used the Hicklin test to determine if the work was obscene. The legal test was established in the case Regina versus Hicklin 1868, in which a British court held that a work must be regarded as obscene if it tended to deprave and corrupt those whose minds are open to such immoral influences, regardless of artistic or literary merit. This meant that the threshold for what could be considered obscene would be judged from the perspective of someone young and impressionable, or someone who had already sought obscene material. However, years before the Supreme Court judgment, the standard for obscenity in the UK had changed. The Obscene Publications Act 1959 stated that work must be considered as a whole before considering its effect on likely audiences. The United States also went on to discard the Hicklin test in Roth versus United States. The US Supreme Court held that the test for obscenity was whether to the average person applying contemporary community standards, the dominant theme of the material taken as a whole appeals to prurient interest. While the Hicklin test defined obscenity using the lowest common denominator, the courts in US and UK accounted for shifting and evolving societal mores. The Roth case influenced the Indian Supreme Court's choice to adopt the community standards test in Avik Sarkar versus State of Bengal. The Supreme Court quashed obscenity proceedings against magazines for carrying an image of tennis player Boris Becker posing nude with his fiancée. It held that applying the Hicklin test will result in the work being judged for obscenity based on isolated passages of a work considered out of context and judged by the apparent influence on most susceptible readers. In March 24, Supreme Court quashed proceedings against the creators of YouTube web series College Romance under Section 292 of the IPC and Section 67 of the IT Act. The prosecution argued that the characters on the show used vulgar language and the plot resolved around college students offensively discussing and engaging in sexual activities. The Supreme Court applied the community standards test. It held that while the literal meaning of the terms used may be sexual in nature and they may refer to sexual acts, their usage does not arouse sexual feelings or lust in any viewer of ordinary prudence and common sense. Rather, the common usage of these words is reflective of anger, emotions of anger, rage, frustration, grief, or perhaps excitement. Einstein's ring, a ring of light that forms around a massive celestial body, an example of gravitational lensing. The European Space Agency's Euclid Space Telescope has discovered an Einstein ring around a galaxy some 950 million light years from Earth. Photos of the Einstein ring taken by Euclid in September 2023 were released on Monday show a ball of light galaxy NGC 6505 with a bright cloudy ring around it. Stephen Sargent, an astronomer at the Open University, told, "This is beautiful, extraordinary, thrilling, and lucky find in our first data. An Einstein ring is a ring of light that may form around dark matter, galaxy, or a cluster of galaxies. It is essentially an ample example of gravitational lensing, a phenomena which occurs when massive celestial body creates a gravitational field which distorts and amplifies the light from distant galaxies that are behind it, but in the same line of sight. It is an example of gravitational lensing, a phenomena which occurs when massive celestial body creates a gravitational field. When massive celestial body creates a gravitational field which distorts and amplifies the light from distant galaxies that are behind it, but in the same line of sight. The body causing the line to curve is called gravitational lens. Distort and amplifies the light from distant galaxies that are behind it but in the same line of sight. In the case of recently discovered Einstein ring, NGC 6505 was the gravitational lens which distorted and amplified the light coming from a distant unarmed galaxy located 4.42 billion light years away. A light year, roughly 9.46 trillion kilometer, is a distance light travels in 1 year. Huang Zhaosheng Huang, a professor of physics and astronomy at the University of San Francisco, told NPR that gravitational lensing can result in several types of image configurations, including an Einstein ring, which is perhaps the most striking of them all. Einstein rings are named after Albert Einstein, whose theory of general relativity predicted that light could bend and brighten around objects across the cosmos. Light could bend and brighten around the cosmos, objects across the cosmos. Several Einstein rings have been discovered since 1987, although it remains unclear how many such rings exist in total. Experts suggest that these are extremely rare, with less than 1% galaxies having an Einstein ring. Notably, these rings can only be observed using powerful space telescopes such as Euclid. Einstein rings help scientists investigate dark matter, which has never been detected but is believed to make up 85% of all matter in the universe. Einstein rings help scientists investigate dark matter, which has never been detected but is believed to make up 85% of all matter in the universe. Conor O'Riordan, a postdoctoral scholar at Max Planck Institute of Astrophysics, told CNN, "This dark matter does not interact with light, but it does have a gravitational effect. Gravitational lensing, therefore, is sensitive to the presence of this dark matter, allowing us to indirectly detect it." Moreover, Einstein rings enable scientists to learn about distant galaxies which otherwise might not be visible. They can also provide information about the expansion of the universe, as the space between Earth and other galaxies, both in the foreground and in the background, is stretching according to NASA. Exactly 6 months after former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's unceremonious ouster from Dhaka, a mob on February 5 razed to the ground the Banga Bandhu Memorial Museum at the Dhanmondi 32. The building has been previously torched by vandals last year, hours after Hasina's exit on August 5. Dhanmondi 32 was the residence of Banga Bandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the founding father of Bangladesh. It was this house that Mujib led Bengali resistance against Pakistan throughout the 1960s till his arrest in 1971, according to a museum's website. Dhanmondi 32 was the center of all Banga Bandhu's political activities. And it was here that renegade officers of the Bangladesh army murdered Banga Bandhu, his wife, sons, and 10-year-old grandson. Mujib's daughters Hasina and Rehana survived as they were abroad at the time. In 1994, Hasina converted the building into a museum. This makes the Mundi 32's demolition a watershed moment in Bangladesh political history, but this is not the first time that anti-Hasina protesters have targeted Mujib's legacy. In the 3 years prior to his killings in the 1975, Mujib attempted to reshape Bangladesh's national character and delink it from Pakistani traditions. This included concerted efforts to those Bangladesh army officers who ostracize, did not participate in the liberation war and containing Islamist tendencies in both polity and the military. But there was pushback from some quarters that ultimately led to Mujib's assassination and a military coup in 1975. General Ziaur Rahman took control unofficially by late 1975, officially as the president in 1977, and undid many of the Mujib's policies. Notably, he gave more space, including cabinet positions, to parties like Jamaat-e-Islami and mainstream politics. This continued under subsequent Bangladesh Nationalist Party governments of Ziaur's wife Khalida Zia in 1991-6 and 2001-6 period. It is in this context that Hasina's personal politics must be understood. After coming to power in 2009, Hasina clamped down on Islamist parties, ensuring that they are effectively removed from the electoral field. She also targeted alleged Razakars or collaborators with the Pakistani state for their war crimes in 1971, beyond reflecting Banga Bandhu's political vision. The Awami League relied heavily on Mujib's legacy to legitimize Hasina's politics, which became increasingly controversial with each election since 2014. Much of what the Hasina administration did, good or bad, was in Mujib's name. This made protecting Mujib's legacy of paramount importance. To this end, Hasina administration passed laws like the Digital Security Act 2018, whose Section 21 penalizes any propaganda or campaign against liberation war, father of the nation Banga Bandhu, with imprisonment up to 10 years or fine up to 1 crore taka. By February 24, anti-Hasina protest gathered steam, anything and everything linked to the Prime Minister, from her strong India tilt to her resilient reliance on Mujib's legacy, came under attack. Hasina's years-long clampdown on the opposition, including the arrest of Khalida Zia in 2018 and ban on BNP's activities and publications in 2023, alleged corruption and economic mismanagement had created significant resentment among the populace. When the resentment boiled over, the people of Bangladesh rejected the very basis of Hasina's politics and espousal of what she believed was authentic Bangladeshi nationalism based on Awami Leagues and Mujib's role in liberation struggle. This is why Hasina's use of the term Razakar while criticizing student protesters did not work. Amike, Tumike, Razakar, Razakar, who am I? Who are you, Razakar, Razakar? They chanted, proudly owning what had long been seen as the most terrible biggest slur in Bangladesh politics. Long suppressed fundamentalist and Islamist elements finding space in the protest, ostensibly led by the students against discrimination, only made things worse. As protesters closed in on Hasina's assistance on August 5, Mujib's statues were toppled and murals defaced. Put simply, Bangladeshi reverence for Mujib as the founding father was superseded by protesters' revulsion for his daughter's authoritarianism in his name. Yunus' legitimacy bid, what happened in Dhamundi 2032 in August, was the result of anti-Hasina settlements being extended to the instrument she used to sustain her rule. But its demolition last week was the product of a different process. Over the last 6 months, the interim government has faced significant challenges, including questions regarding Muhammad Yunus's own legitimacy as chief advisor, most notably from Hasina herself. To counter this, the Yunus government has mounted pressure on India, fresh friction at the border, diplomatic spats, and unprecedented defense and intelligence ties between Dhaka and Rawalpindi, among other things, and more importantly, prosecuted Hasina legally, politically, and socially. Institutions that Hasina had erected, such as the International Crimes Tribunal in 2010, have also been turned against her. The ICT was originally meant to investigate war crimes from 1971. But the tribunal now focuses on alleged crimes against humanity committed under Hasina's rule, has issued several arrest warrants against her, banned the publication of her speeches, and is seeking an Interpol Red Notice. A fresh and determined focus on undoing Mujib's legacy, with all things associated with Mujib being characterized as symbols of fascism that must be removed, is a key part of the government's strategy to legitimize itself and sustain its rule. This is best illustrated by the government cancelling 8 Hasina-era national holidays linked to Mujib, including one on August 15, the anniversary of Mujib's assassination. At the same time, the government allowed the celebration of Muhammad Ali Jinnah's 76th death anniversary at Dhaka National Press Club with Urdu songs and poetry, something that flies in the face of what Bangladesh's struggle against West Pakistan's linguistic and cultural imposition on Bengali Muslims stood for. If the 2024 anti-Hasina protests targeted Hasina's father, latest developments are against the father of the nation. The strong downstream effect of the government's move is that extremists, the likes of whom destroyed Bangabandhu House, now get free hand to target Mujib. That this does not represent the entirety or even majority of the views held by Bangladeshi people was reflected in what Mahfouz Alam, editor of Daily Star, wrote. We cannot malign Bangabandhu's historic and indisputable role with what Sheikh Hasina has did in the past 15 plus years she was in power. Unfortunately, much like the politics of revenge that Hasina herself perpetuated, the Yunus administration now benefits from a reciprocal focus on revenge. Banga Bandhu's legacy pays the price. Story of Savarkar's attempted sea escape in Marseille, in his own words. While in Marseille, Prime Minister Narendra Modi Tuesday night wrote about the port city's special connection to India's struggle for independence. It was here that the great Veer Savarkar attempted a courageous escape. I also want to thank people of the Marseille and the French activists of the time who demanded that he not be handed over to the British custody. Vinayak Damodar Savarkar was arrested in London in March 1910 on charges of anti-state acts and abetment of Nashik magistrate A.M.T. Jackson's murder. While being brought to India for trial on board the commercial ship SS Moria, Savarkar tried to escape from custody in Marseille. SS Moria had sailed from London on July 1, 1910. It docked at Marseille a week later. According to the records of the PCA, on July 8, 1910, Savarkar, who was being closely guarded, sought permission to use the washroom. He then bolted the toilet from inside, jumped out of the ship's port hole, swam ashore. However, Savarkar was soon apprehended by the brigadier of the French maritime gendarmerie, who handed him over to the guards from the ship after mistaking him for the crew member. Savarkar's escape, however, sparked a dispute between France and Great Britain, which was settled by the PCA. The issue before the International Tribunal was whether British should hand over Savarkar to France. The French government did not approve of the manner in which Mr. Savarkar has been returned to British custody and demanded his restitution to France on the grounds that his delivery to British authorities amounts to defective extradition. The British government contended that according to the arrangements made for the security of the prisoner, while the ship was in port, the French authorities has obliged to prevent his escape. The tribunal found that all those agents who had taken part in this incident has demonstrated good faith. The tribunal concluded that despite the irregularity committed in the arrest of Mr. Savarkar, such irregularity did not result in any obligation on the British government to restore Mr. Savarkar to the French government. Savarkar was brought to India and tried. He was sentenced to two life terms by the Bombay High Court for 25 years each in December 1910 and January 1911. He would be sentenced to rigorous imprisonment in cellular jail in Port Blair, Andaman on July 4, 1911. Savarkar's references his attempted sea escape in his Marathi biographical work Mazi Janam Thep, first published in 1927. The book has been translated into English as Story of My Transportation for Life by Professor V. N. Nayak. When our army of prisoners was taken out to proceed to the Andamans, I was left behind. I wondered why a motor car came up to the door. Two big sergeants got down from it. I was put into it and then stepped in after me. The door was shut and the car started. I was not taken along the road like rest because they feared that the crowd, who knew of my departure, had stationed itself on the road in scattered groups to have a sight of me. Besides, I was the culprit who ran away in Marseille. Perhaps I may be spirited away in the same fashion by some members of the secret societies. of which there were many in those days. A mine may spring up beneath my feet, and who knows, I may disappear all of a sudden. These and other reasons of safety had decided the authorities to take me to the station all by myself in a car and along a different route. They did not want to repeat the mistake they had committed in Marseille. He wrote, whenever I was thus taken from one place to another in a special car and under special guard, my fellow prisoners thought highly of me. My effort to run away from a steamer boat at Marseille did do me some good after all. It procured me a car to enjoy a long ride. It created in the mind of these prisoners a sort of reverence for me. And further, right or wrong, the more the authorities tried to belittle me, the greater the respect they showed to me. Some surprises, many challenges. After Telangana caste survey, state will face hurdles in tweaking quotas. Kancha Ilya Shepherd, former director, Center for the Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusion Policy, Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Hyderabad. The Telangana Cabinet Subcommittee released the data for the recently concluded caste survey on February 3. The Cabinet approved the survey and placed it before the State Assembly on February 4. The broad percentiles of the survey show that the non-Muslim other backward classes constitute 46% and Muslim other backward classes contribute 10% of the state's population, while the scheduled caste constitutes 17% and scheduled tribes constitute 10%. Non-Muslim general caste, other caste are at 13% and non-Muslim OBCs also include Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, not just Hindus, although their number are small. What is surprising in this data is the number of Muslim OBCs. Nobody expected that out of 12.56% Muslims, only 2.48 would not claim OBC status. The general caste, including Muslims general caste, constitute 15%. It is also possible that the poverty levels of the Muslim OBCs match their caste position. As of now, Telangana Muslims have just 4% reservation. The Bharatiya Janata Party has been opposing giving any reservation to Muslims. The increase of the tribal population broadly from about 7% in United Andhra Pradesh to 10% in Telangana is because of the concentration of Lambada population that lives in the plains, along with forest tribes such as Gonds and Koyas. The state level caste and socio-economic survey has serious implications for national and local welfare politics. For the first time, Congress state government had undertaken such survey in the country. Rahul Gandhi had launched a national campaign on the issue. It is also possible that the poverty levels of the Muslim OBCs match their caste position. As of now, Telangana Muslims have just 4% reservation. The BJP has been opposing giving any reservation to Muslims. The increase of the tribal population broadly from 7% in the United Andhra to 10.45% in Telangana is because of the concentration of Lambada population that lives in the plains along with forest tribes such as Gonds and Koyas. Lambada, Gonds and Koyas. Lambda, Gonds and Koyas. The state-level socio-economic survey has serious implications for national and local welfare politics. For the first time, Congress state government has undertaken such a survey in the country. Rahul Gandhi had launched a national campaign on the issue, saying that 90% of the OBC, SCs, and STs are out of the power structures in India. During the Bharat Jodo Yatra from Kanyakumari to Kashmir and the Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra from Manipur to Mumbai, Rahul Gandhi promised that if Congress comes to power, it will get comprehensive caste census done at national level. An important reason that the Rahul Gandhi pushed the caste census was to put the BJP government in Delhi in an ideological fix. Under the leadership of the Narendra Modi, the BJP has won substantial number of votes from the OBCs. It was this bloc in North India that helped the BJP retain power for the first third term, albeit with the support of the alliance partners. Rahul Gandhi wants to break this fortress of the BJP by pushing a much more radical pro-OBC agenda. The caste census is a key anchor in that fight. The Revant Reddy government effectively efforts to conduct a caste census within 14 months of coming to power are praiseworthy, given the complications involved in the survey not just at the level of states but also at the national level. Normally, collection of census data is done by union government, but so far no national government has touched on the issue of caste data in the national census, which is normally conducted every 10 years. After 2011, the UPA government did a half-hearted socio-economic survey, part of which was the collection of caste data, but this was never released. Once the BJP came, that data was dumped. The Modi government has shown total indifference to the caste census issue because of RSS BJP's long dependence on the general caste. The non-OBC general caste have unusually opposed such an exercise, as the numbers would certainly bring in new political equations everywhere. In the post Mandal decades, OBCs have slowly but surely become vote banks in themselves, creating a crisis in the old dependence of Congress on the Muslim and Dalit vote banks. However, OBCs have been demanding a caste census for a while because once the caste data comes out, the Supreme Court's cap of 27% on OBC reservation can be challenged. This position taken by the OBC leaders across the country strengthened that Modi government gave 10% reservation to the economically weaker section of the general caste. The government brought an act and implemented it to begin with the All India services. This was challenged in the Supreme Court, which then upheld this reservation. The Nitish Kumar led government in Bihar was the first government to do its own caste survey. The survey showed that 63% from OBCs. Based on this data, the Bihar government tried to increase the OBC reservation, but the Patna High Court struck it down as unconstitutional. When it comes to the percentage of non-Muslim OBCs, the Telangana survey data is along expected lines. The immediate impact of these numbers, though collected by a state government through its state planning board, is that government faces pressures to implement the party promise of 42% reservation for the OBCs in the local elections due this year. The OBCs, both Muslims and non-Muslims, constitute 56% of the population. However, given the 50% cap on reservation, OBCs get only 27%. If the government wants to increase it to 42%, it needs approval of the center. How does the Telangana government overcome this hurdle? The government has also released its proposed subclassification of SCs, which is also likely to face hurdles. Respect choice, no impunity. The plight of the interfaith couples who suffered assault and harassment in the Bhopal court and Uttarakhand is concerning. Such incidents betray the assurances by the Prime Minister, Chief Minister, and Home Minister that UCC's provisions are for protection and dignity of women. The audacity of right wing outfits to beat up a person inside the court premises is shocking. Then that they were able to do this so brazenly stems from their sense of impunity due to political patronage. The incident seemed to prove true the apprehensions expressed by the Supreme Court bench comprising former Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud. The state has no role to play in the personal choices of individuals, especially with respect of their choice of partners. The very beauty of this country lies in its diversity of religions and practices, and any move towards enforcing uniformity over these is bound to face opposition from the young and the educated. The state would do well to maintain a distance from the personal choices of its people. It should instead focus on bringing in reforms that promote harmony within the diversity our country has to offer. This refers to the editorial Take a Deep Breath. Rohit Sharma has answered critics with a scintillating and flawless 100 in Cuttack. It was evident that he was confident in himself. Deal making with Trump. The upcoming meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Trump presents a crucial moment for India to assert its trade interest. Given Trump's aggressive negotiation style, India should be prepared to stand firm. Its average tariff on key US exports such as crude oil, LNG, coal, and diamonds is well below 5%. India has already reduced tariffs in the budget, demonstrating flexibility without compromising on long term goals. Cutting tariffs hastily under pressure could have unintended consequences. India must carefully evaluate on the impacts before making any commitments. For good and for all, India's national AI mission is built on the foundation of accessibility and democratization, and we are ready to share this experience and expertise with the world. Let me begin with a simple experiment. If you upload a medical report of an AI app, it can explain in a simple language, free of any jargon, what it means for your health. But if you ask the same app to draw an image of someone writing with their left hand, the app will most likely draw someone writing with their right hand, because that is what the training data is dominated by. It shows that while the positive potential of AI is absolutely amazing, there are many biases that we need to think carefully about. That is why I am grateful to my friend Emmanuel Macron, President Macron, for hosting this summit and for inviting me to co chair it. AI is already reshaping our polity, our economy, our security, and even our society. AI is writing the code for humanity in this century, but it is very different from each other technology milestones in human history. AI is developing at an unprecedented scale and speed, and being adopted and deployed even faster. There is also deep interdependence across borders. Therefore, there is a need for collective global efforts to uphold our shared values, address risk, and build trusts. But government is not just about managing risk and rivalries, it is also about promoting innovation and deploying it for global good. So we must think deeply and discuss openly about innovation and governance. Governance is about ensuring access to all, especially in the global south. It is where the capacities are most lacking, be it computing power, data, or financial resources. AI can help transform millions of lives by improving health, education, agriculture, and so much more. It can help create a world in which a journey to sustainable development goals becomes easier and faster. To do this, we must pool together resources and talent. We must develop open source systems that enhance trust and transparency. We must build quality data sets free from biases. We must democratize technology and create people centric applications. We must address concerns related to cybersecurity, disinformation, and deepfakes. And we must also ensure that technology is rooted in local ecosystems for it to be effective and useful. Loss of jobs is AI's most feared disruption, but history has shown that work does not disappear due to technology. Its nature changes and new types of jobs are created. We need to invest in skilling and reskilling of our people for an AI driven future. There is no doubt that the high energy intensity of AI needs to be looked into. This will require green power to fuel its future. India and France have worked together for years through initiatives like International Solar Alliance to harness the power of the sun. As we advance our partnership to AI, it is natural progression from sustainability to innovation to shape a smarter and responsible future. At the same time, sustainable AI does not mean using clean energy. AI models must be efficient and sustainable in size, data needs, and resource requirements. After all, the human brain manages to compose poetry and design spaceships using less power than most light bulbs. India has successfully built a design digital public infrastructure for over 1.4 billion people at a very low cost. It is built upon around an open and accessible network. It has regulations and a wide range of applications to modernize our economy, reform governance, and transform the lives of our people. We have unlocked the power of data through our data empowerment and protection architecture, and we have made digital commerce democratic and accessible to all. The vision is the foundation of India's national AI mission. This is why during our G20 presidency we built a consensus on harnessing AI responsibility for good and for all. Today, India leads in AI adoption, techno legal solutions on data privacy. We are developing AI applications for public good, and we have one of the world's largest AI talent pools. India is building its own large language model considering our diversity. We have also a unique public private partnership model for pooling resources like to compute power. It is made available to our startups and researchers at an affordable cost. And India is ready to share its experience and expertise to ensure that AI future is for good and for all. We are at the dawn of the AI age that will shape the course of humanity. Some people worry about machines becoming superior and in intelligence to humans, but no one holds the key to our collective future and shared destiny other than us humans. The sense of our responsibility must guide us. Don't go it along. Rather than withdraw from WTO, India should strengthen trade multilateralism. A recurring demand from a section of Indian farmers is that they should exit from the WTO. They believe WTO rules hinder their ability to secure a legal guarantee for the MSP. Under the WTO's Agreement on Agriculture, MSP is characterized as a trade distorting subsidy. The rationale is that if countries are permitted to provide such subsidies to their farmers, it would give them an unfair advantage in the global market, rendering agricultural products from other countries uncompetitive. As a result, trade distorting subsidies like MSP are subject to specific limits. The agreement of agriculture has significant imbalances. The external reference price, an average price established based on the base years of 1986 to 88, against which MSP is compared to determine trade distorting subsidies, has not been revised in decades. Consequently, the gap between the MSP and the fixed ERP has widened dramatically due to inflation. India has been negotiating diligently at the WTO to rectify this issue, but without success. Exiting the WTO, which can be accomplished by providing a 6 months notice under Article 15 of the WTO agreement, would legally allow India to set any MSP for as many crops as it wishes. Whether this approach would be fiscally feasible is uncertain. However, regardless of this, this is sufficient reason for India to exit the WTO. The answer is a resounding no. Within the existing imperfect agreement on agriculture, India already has some policy leeway to support farmers through higher MSP, especially for crops like wheat and rice. Thanks to the peace clause, this clause prevents legal challenges against trade distorting subsidies like price support, even if they exceed permissible limits. Additionally, if India can be supported through any other policy instruments such as income support, which do not qualify as trade distorting subsidy under Agreement of Agriculture, schemes like Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, which provides farmers with an annual income of 6,000, can be enhanced. Unfortunately, the 2025 budget missed the bus on this point. It is also important to note that the WTO encompasses more than just agricultural trade. It passes a crucial law in international trade law, aiming to create a level playing field for all countries by safeguarding their goods and services against discrimination in export markets. If India were to leave the WTO, its exports would lose national treatment, ensuring no discrimination between imported and domestic products, and most favored nation treatment, which ensures no discrimination between trading partners. India would then need to negotiate numerous bilateral or free trade agreements, a process that would be complicated, elevate bureaucratic cost, and harm businesses excessively. Moreover, FTAs typically present more stringent norms than those of WTO, particularly when they involve a developing country negotiating with a developed country. Another critical aspect of the WTO is it provides a relatively sophisticated mechanism for resolving trade disputes. Within the existing imperfect agreement on agriculture, India already has some policy leeway to support farmers through higher MSP, especially for crops like wheat and rice, thanks to the peace clause. This clause prevents legal challenges against trade distorting subsidies like price support, even if they exceed permissible limits. Additionally, India's farmers can be supported through other policy instruments such as income support, which do not qualify as trade distorting subsidy under Agreement on Agriculture. It is also important to note that the WTO encompasses more than just agricultural trade. It plays a crucial role in international field trade law, aiming to create a level playing field for all countries by safeguarding their goods and services against discrimination. If India were to leave the WTO, its exports would lose national treatment, ensuring no discrimination between imported and domestic products, and most favored nation treatment. Moreover, FTAs typically present more stringent terms than those of the WTO, particularly when they involve a developing country negotiating with a developed country. Another crucial aspect of the WTO is that it provides a relatively sophisticated mechanism for resolving trade disputes, although its appellate function is currently non-operational. This system is generally more effective than the diplomacy based dispute resolution offered by other trade agreements. If other countries fail to adhere to their international trade law obligations towards India, Delhi can challenge such actions at the WTO as it had successfully done numerous times over the past 3 decades. If India were to exit the WTO, this recourse would be eliminated. Given that India is not member of any major FTA remaining in the WTO is even more crucial for Indian goods and services. The WTO is currently facing a significant crisis, especially with the US turning its back on it. A weakened WTO will enable the US to act unilaterally to confront the economic challenges posed by China. During the critical time of rising trade protectionism, India should not withdraw but instead work to strengthen WTO. This will ensure that multilateral checks and balances continue to function and help rising protectionism. Trade multilateralism is the principle that the WTO represents is the best bet for developing countries like India. It is essential to communicate clearly with farmers and involve them in this process as they are key stakeholders. We owe this to the youth. Checking graft in the education system requires a combination of technology and value instruction. It is painful to hear that the Vice Chancellor, officials of the NAC, and professors of prestigious institutions have were arrested recently for bribes allegedly given in exchange for better rankings. It is doubly painful to see the system descending to the corruption that was once eliminated. Transparency and accountability were brought into the accreditation system almost 13 years ago. Complete digitization of every process that began with the receiving of applications, processing them, and uploading deficiencies to generating the final approval letters was a path breaking transformation that brought about great institutional credibility. Regulators subbind the nature of work opportunities for corruption. Someone breaks the rule and someone is expected to bring them to book. This is either done or not done for a price. The cycle is difficult to break when the stakes get higher. That said, is corruption an economic phenomena which is judged on ethical grounds? AICTE before reforms was seen as a step in systemic corruption, including conflicting incentives, discretionary and monopolistic powers, lack of transparency, and a culture of impunity. These stemmed from weaknesses in due process with some in which some institutions exploited. New processes were developed with checks and balances, and these were hard-coded into an e-governance system. The AICT has a large contingent of employees who were on deputation while the rest were entrenched in the old ways. The combination erased the institutional memory on one hand and encouraged impunity on the other. At AICT, everyone on deputation was really replaced and the permanent staff transferred. These decisions came at a price with threats both personal and professional. Today, AICTE and National of Accreditation enjoy a fair degree of credibility. The system is still not foolproof, and securing it against corruption remains a work in progress. However, other regulatory agencies, especially in the education system, could still do well to learn from AICT's experience. Is corruption limited only to government establishments? There are any number of private companies that indulge in corruption. This is not a question of your corruption versus my corruption. The question is a lack of values in the people who run the systems. That said, the government, with transparency and good governance as its supreme tenets, must lead the way to prevent all forms of corruption. The pressure to succeed today is immense. Technology can be a leveler, but it can only do so much. That's why the reforms initiated more than a decade ago require follow up today, especially because society places a premium on education like never before. Our education system has done well to procure and to produce entrepreneurs, politicians, doctors, engineers, artists, and actors. Even then, it is time to reimagine it by keeping values in focus. At times, corruption is hidden in all societies. All parties want to keep their transactions secret. For some, it could be doing someone a friendly turn. For others, it could be just a minor misbehavior. Different people understand corruption differently. Incidents of corruption lead to calls for reform. However, reforms can only result from paradigm shifts. How to affect this paradigm shift in the education ecosystem? The realization that corruption is bad and must be dealt with a good starting point. Second is to understand the political economy and system. Agencies like NAC and NBA must realize that the stakes are high for the management running these institutes. They raise the fees based on better rankings and hence they will do whatever it takes. After all, rankings translate into hundreds of crores each admission year, not just to speak the sale of so called management seats. The NAC's proposed binary accreditation may be an answer, however, it tends to gloss over the finer aspects of quality and puts everyone at an equal disadvantage. There is also the problem of visiting expert teams who are expected to verify the claims. This is a huge starting point for corruption. Data uploaded to the site instantly verified through third parties and legacy data with discrepancies flagged instantly is an idea worth exploring. DigiLocker, a secured cloud-based platform for the storage, sharing, and verification of documents and certificates, provides access to authentic digital documents to the citizen's digital document wallet. Why not make it mandatory for every institute to upload their documents, both academic and administrative? The NAC's proposed binary accreditation may be an answer, however, it tends to gloss over finer aspects of quality and puts everyone at an equal disadvantage. There is also a problem of visiting expert teams who are expected to verify the claims. This is a huge starting point for corruption. Data uploaded at the site instantly, verified through third parties, and legacy data with discrepancies flagged instantly is an idea worth exploring. DigiLocker, secure cloud-based platform for the storage, sharing, and verification of documents, provides access to authentic digital data documents to the citizen's current document wallet. Why not make it mandatory for every institute to upload administrative all their documents that can be used as primary sources of verification? The Mexican economic economist Angel Gurria, who was OECD Secretary General between 2016 and 2021, framed the problem aptly. Integrity, transparency, and the fight against corruption have to be part of the culture. They have to be taught as fundamental values. And he said, by all accounts, individual action has proved insufficient to target systemic corruption. Experts like Guria have their first emphasized collective action. However, whatever the method, it will be naive to expect that corruption will disappear from society. Our efforts must be to rein it in and protect the vulnerable. Keeping the education system free of controversy is critical prerequisite for catering to the needs of an aspirational society. The cost of corruption are paid by the taxpayer. The cost of corruption in the education system are paid by the country's youth. Corruption may be as old as human history. However, regulatory heads and vice chancellor ought to lead by example. Open and robust. Prime Minister Modi's pitch for open source AI aligns with India's goals with global realities. Private players must be part of this project. Optimism tempered with a note of caution marked Prime Minister Narendra Modi's opening address at the AI Action Summit in Paris on Tuesday, co chairing the event with French President Emmanuel Macron. The Prime Minister spoke of the absolutely amazing positive potential of AI in health, education, agriculture, and other sectors, while also underlining the need to be alert to its potential for biases. As he did so, he outlined a vision for the future where open source systems enhance trust and transparency, where technology is democratized and rooted in local ecosystems, words that carry a special resonance in the post DeepSeek world, where old certainties about capital and compute intensive models built in a closed ecosystem has been shaken by an open source, cheaply made Chinese model. The Prime Minister's pitch for the open source route comes in the context of India's own growing ambitions on the AI front. It hints at the desire to strike out on a path that diverges from the one that has so far been laid by the Silicon Valley behemoths like Google and Microsoft. It signals India's aspiration to be more than just a market for models developed elsewhere, such as ones by the OpenAI, whose CEO Sam Altman showed much excitement for the country's vast and growing user base on his visit last week. India, as the PM noted, is pushing to build its own language model and ensure a place for itself in a contest that has intensified in recent months. How intense and indeed fraught this race has become was evident at the summit, with two participants, the US and the UK, refusing to sign to summit declaration, the former on the grounds that excessive regulation could stifle innovation, and the latter because the statement did not go far enough in addressing global governance of the technology. Finding common ground between such competing visions and working towards global concerted approach to AI is the challenge going forward. India has offered to host the next summit. In the meantime, it must work towards realizing its aspiration to save the future of AI, building a domestic LLM and procuring high-end GPUs. Even building its own GPU, the Union Minister of Electronics and Information Technology said, would be an important step in that direction. As it sets about executing 10,000 crore India AI mission for which 2,000 crore was sanctioned, it must also ensure that private players who have typically led in the AI race, including China, can grow and compete at the highest level. Missed deadline on the Paris Pact is unfortunate. Countries should use extra time to draft comprehensive plans. The most important part of the Paris Climate Pact is that every country must renew its pledge or the NDCs every 5 years. All stocktakes have shown that the last set of NDCs were inadequate to meet the treaty's target of keeping the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial levels. Last year, the UNFCCC showed that the combined NDCs would bring down temperature only by 2.6 degrees by 2030. Countries were slated to submit their new pledges by February 10. However, only 12 countries have adhered to this deadline. Most G20 countries have missed out. The UK, Brazil, Japan, and the US are among the notable exceptions. However, the US document is largely academic given the president Donald Trump has withdrawn his country from the Paris Pact. The UNFCCC now expect all countries to submit their plans by September, when the targets will be tallied in the run-up to the COP30 in Brazil. The sluggish response for more than 90% of the signatories of the Paris Pact reflects lack of political will to tackle the climate crisis. Countries should now use the extra time to draft responses that reflect substantially elevated ambitions compared to their first NDCs. More importantly, NDCs should have detailed roadmaps of how the Paris Pact signatories plan to translate their words into action. These should not be a replica of the net zero plans of the Western world. A frequent and valid criticism of some of these plans is that they are short on details on ways to reduce emission. Critics have also pointed out that overwhelming reliance on carbon credit companies can buy such credits by funding projects that theoretically offset their emission will undermine direct action to reduce emissions. And a new reckoning of the global warming challenge will have to factor in the disruption caused by the US president. Given the impetus in the US behind green technologies, the country's emissions trajectory may not change for some time. However, the absence of world's second highest polluter from climate negotiation will require other countries to do more. The hero workers need. It is not the Chinese men who rushed to get back to work right after a heart attack. Among biggest ever renewable energy buys, ONGC and TPC JV Inc.'s $2.3 billion deal for 100% stake in Ayana Renewable Power. Sudden tax changes impacts investment. Foreign domestic investors should be at par. Swiss companies are increasingly looking to partner up with Indian firms to better navigate the Indian market, and a bilateral investment treaty with India that protects foreign investors' rights, Switzerland State Secretary said. Now, if you suddenly change your tax regime without prior indication, that will naturally impact investment decisions, not only for the Swiss companies but also for Indian and other foreign firms. That is, of course, India's sovereign decision. If the Indian Parliament decides to change the tax structure, so be it. But the key point is not whether I think the BIT model is right, it is whether the business community is convinced. Business decisions can go against your country, so it is important not to make mistakes. The same applies to Switzerland. Free trade is increasingly coming under question. Threat, Tariff threats from the US have elicited some many concerns. In that context, how you see India EFTA relationship? Switzerland has always been export oriented. We are the top countries with the most FTAs. We are a neutral country, not part of EU or any other economic bloc. And this independence has always driven us to ensure our companies have market access. When I speak about market access, it is not only the FTAs for us. I had the opportunity to discuss the bilateral investment treaty with the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. We believe it is important for our companies to have the opportunity to access international dispute settlement if for some reason they cannot obtain their rights within the national system. Many countries are seeking shorter time frames to resolve investor state disputes. Within India, what is your stance? I cannot give you specific time frame, but for us, it is clear that an international dispute settlement mechanism is the last resort. We fully support the principle that investors must go through national courts first. In modern BITs, for example, we recognize the right to legislate. If the Indian government decides to change regulations in a way that affects all companies, both Indian and foreign, equally, then we have no issue with that. However, if a Swiss investor is being disadvantaged and new rules or decisions are specifically targeted at foreign investors, a Swiss investor, or a single company, then we believe the national legal system should handle the matter first. At the last resort, there should be an option of the international decision. Whether I personally agree with India on the BIT is not so important. What India needs to do is convince international investors. A capital intensive investor will be aware of the conditions in India, Europe and US, Australia and UK, and will make an informed decision accordingly. India needs to convince not only Swiss investors but also the entire international investment community, who, of course, have other options. However, I get the sense that current government understands that they have assured us they are willing to sit down and negotiate with renewed impetus. And in these negotiations, we may also need to be pragmatic on our side. If the Indian government parliament or cabinet approves a legislative change that applies to all companies operating in India, I don't think Swiss government would have an issue with that. We call this right to legislate. This the same can happen in Switzerland. What is crucial, however, is if there is no disadvantage or discrimination against foreign direct investors in particular. Now, if you suddenly change your tax regime without prior indication, that will naturally impact investment decisions, not only for Swiss companies but also for Indian and other foreign firms. That is, of course, India's sovereign decision. If the Indian Parliament decides to change the tax structure, so be it. But the key point is not whether I think the model BIT is right, it is whether the business community is convinced. Business decisions can go against your country, so it is important not to make mistakes. The same applies to Switzerland. It is difficult to comment on the BIT with the UAE. For us, it is important to sit down and discuss the BIT. I understand that India's model text is evolving, but that should not prevent negotiations. That was our primary message. We have over 100 BITs, so we have considerable expertise in negotiating them. In our experience, this applies not just to India but other countries. Many BITs are outdated, having in place for 20 or more years. Countries now want to modernize them, and we have no issue with that. One key update concerns the right to legislate, which was not explicitly included in some of our older BITs. However, a new trend we are seeing, and this is something we would not be comfortable with, is the introduction of extensive carve outs before negotiations even began. Some countries inform us from the outset that they want exclusions in specific sectors. That is not how negotiations should work. You need to sit down and see how far you can get. Towards the end of the negotiations, you can always count on Swiss pragmatism. Retail inflation at 4.5-month low of 4.31% on easing of key food prices. Retail inflation based on consumer price index fell to a 5-month low of 4.31% in January from 5.22% in December. Food inflation based on consumer price food price index eased to 6.02% from 8.39% in December. And inflation of vegetables eased from 2 to 11% from 25% in December, mainly due to improved supplies and seasonal factors. Last week, the RBI, after a gap of 5 years, cut the policy repo rate by 25 basis points to 6.25%. In view of easing pressures, experts expect the RBI to undertake another 25 basis point cut in April. Market fall impact asset under management of equity mutual fund fall by 1.1 lakh crore in January. Hexaware launches 8,500 crore IPO, largest from tech. India's natural gas demand may jump 60% by 2030. IKEA to start online delivery in Delhi NCR. Putin has invited Trump to Moscow, says Kremlin. Trump-Putin discusses ending Ukraine war, prisoner exchange, agree to meet. US to return cybercrime boss Winnick to Russia. Netanyahu vows to fight if hostages are not released by Hamas on Saturday. US Defense Chief Hexeth calls NATO membership for Ukraine unrealistic. Trump's trade advisors finalize reciprocal tariffs, and 1,400 people killed in response to protest in Bangladesh. Egypt and Qatar intensify efforts to save Gaza deal. 16,000 Tamil Hindus celebrate Thai Pusam. China denies its Wuhan lab held study on coronavirus with metal detectors and patients. Treasure hunters unearth pieces of British history. Easy as 1-2-3. Riding on Gill's century and solid bowling, India thrashed England by 142 runs in Ahmedabad to sweep ODI series 3-0. Sachin Yadav 84.39. Nuclear reactors, missiles, engines, India and France deepen ties. The PLI push $1 billion over 3 years to 19 firms fuels recorded surge in handset exports. 75% shares goes to three Apple contract manufacturers. Under its flagship production-linked incentive scheme for smartphone manufacturing, the government has disbursed close to $1 billion in the past 3 years, with Foxconn, Tata Electronics, and Pegatron, the three contract manufacturers of Apple, receiving cumulatively 75% of the amount. According to the data obtained by Indian Express in response to an application under the RTI, the disbursements of total 8,700 crore were made to 19 companies which successfully met their investment and production thresholds. The data revealed that 32 companies were approved over two rounds under the scheme, which has been instrumental for ramping up smartphone production in the country. In fact, handsets are now second highest exported product from India, $13 billion during April to November 2024. Overall, five beneficiaries collectively received more than 98% of the total disbursements: Foxconn 2,800 crore, Tata Electronics 2,000 crore, and Pegatron 1,740 crore, 1,724 crore, Samsung 1,300 crore, and Padgett Electronics 596 crore. Apple contract manufacturers Foxconn, Tata Electronics, and Pegatron, which recently was acquired by the Tatas, have received a total of 6,600 crores over the 3 years. The RTI data also revealed that the first year when PLI incentives were disbursed, the maximum subsidy of 953 crore was issued to Wistron, later acquired by Tata Electronics. In 2023-24, Foxconn, which is Apple's biggest contract manufacturer globally, received a subsidy disbursal of 2,450 crore, the highest during the year. However, in 24-25, the data showed no incentive was issued to Foxconn, In 24-25, Samsung received highest subsidy close to 958 crore. The PLI for large-scale electronics manufacturing, which was first announced in 2020 with an outlay of 38,000 crore, offers incentives ranging from 4 to 6% on net commercial sales of eligible products over sales in the base year to selected applicants. Besides Apple and Samsung, local contract manufacturer Dixon Patriot Electronics have also benefited from the scheme. But some other domestic companies such as Lava, Bhagwati and Optimus have failed to meet PLI targets. Actual investment made by companies producing under PLI scheme was slightly lower than 8,200 crore. In the written response to Parliament, Minister of State for Electronics and IT Prasad said 32 approved companies have committed investment of 11,000 crore and project production target of 10 lakh crore under the scheme. In a post on X last month, Anishwini Vaishnav said companies were targeting to export smartphones worth more than $20 billion in the current financial years. Beyond production, the scheme has also been a big driver of employment in the country. In his observations, Chief Justice asked what was wrong in regulating live-in relationship. What happens if these relationships break up? What if there is a child out of this relationship in respect of the marriage? There is a presumption regarding paternity, but in live-in relationship, where is that presumption? In the garb of invasion of your privacy, can the self-respect of another person be sacrificed? That too when he is your child and there is no proof of marriage or paternity. If registration in if live-ins is a provision for women empowerment, the Solicitor General said. The Chief Justice said that live-ins are already recognized under the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act. The problem is not just about women, though the lady will face certain amount of problems, but of proving paternity. If there is a registration, this would certainly help. As for the degrees of prohibited relations, the Solicitor General said such relationships were already prohibited under the Special Marriage Act, Hindu Marriage Act, and Christian Marriage Act. This leads to genetic problems. We are in 2025, we have to be a little more aware of this. It's medically proven, said the Chief Justice, asking the Solicitor General about the prohibition of marriage between cousins. The Solicitor General said these are the norms accepted across the country. There cannot be fundamental right to marry your cousin's sister. What's wrong in regulating live-ins? Asked High Court on plea against UCC, observing that self-respect of a person cannot be sacrificed in the grave of invasion of privacy, especially when he is a child born out of a live-in relationship. The Uttarakhand High Court said asked what was wrong with regulating such relationships. The bench of Chief Justice G. Narendra was hearing a petition challenging the provisions of the UCC, especially those pertaining to live-in relationships. The petition filed by Siddiqui through advocate Kartikeya Harigupta also challenges the list of prohibited relationships mentioned in the court and said it has not only it not only hinders petitioners' religious right to marry, but also declares such marriages void and criminalizes it. Appearing for the Uttarakhand and central government's Solicitor General Tushar Mehta sought 6 weeks to file a response to the petition after the Chief Justice sought justification on Section 387(1) of the law which criminalizes non-registration of relationships with either imprisonment of the 3 months or the fine of 10,000 or both. Mehta said, "We will put in a reply there is a justification for this. We have conducted a study and there are several destitute women." In his observations, the Chief Justice asked, what was wrong in regulating live-in relationships? What happens if these relationships break up? And what if there is a child out of this relationship? Nuclear energy key to energy mix move to low carbon economy. India and France Wednesday agreed to jointly develop modern nuclear reactors, boost defense cooperation with procurement of missiles, submarines, engines for aircraft, helicopters, and jointly work on projects in third countries. These were the outcome of bilateral discussions between Modi and Macron on board the presidential aircraft while flying from Paris to Marseille. Describing the decision to travel together on the presidential aircraft, an exceptional gesture by the President Macron, emblematic of the deep personal trust between the two leaders and remarkable confidence they have in each other, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said. India-France ties literally touched new heights. The two leaders, Misri said, renewed the bilateral cooperation in areas of defense, space, civil cooperation, civil nuclear cooperation, and health and people to people ties. According to joint statement, Prime Minister Modi and President Macron stressed that nuclear energy is an essential part of the energy mix for strengthening the energy security and transitioning towards low carbon budget economy. Both leaders acknowledged the India-France civil nuclear ties and efforts and cooperation on the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, notable in relation with Jaitapur nuclear power project. They welcomed the first meeting of Special Task Force on Civil Nuclear Energy and welcomed the signing of letter for small modular reactors and advanced modular reactors. Agreement between India's GCNEP, DAE and France INSTN CA for cooperating the training and education of nuclear professionals. SMRs are compact nuclear fission reactors that can be manufactured in factories and then installed everywhere. Going ahead with the AI, Macron launched an India-France roadmap on artificial intelligence rooted in philosophical convergence in their approaches. Under the theme of Partnership for Security and Sovereignty, the two leaders recalled the deep and long-standing defense cooperation. Joint statement said both leaders commended progress in collaboration in construction of Scorpion submarines in India, including indigenization and in particular the work carried out with a view to the integration of DRDO. Developed air-independent propulsion into the P-75 Scorpion submarines and the analysis conducted regarding possible integration of the integrated combat system into the future P-75 AS submarines. The leaders welcomed the commissioning of the sixth and the final submarine of the P-75 Scorpion class project, INS Bakshir. Both sides welcomed the ongoing discussions in missiles, helicopter engines, and jet engines. They also welcomed the excellent cooperation between the relevant uh, entities in the Saffron Group and their intern counterparts. Prime Minister Modi also invited French army to take part in the closer look at the Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launcher, emphasizing that an acquisition of this system by France would be another milestone into Indo-French defense ties. In addition, President Macron welcomed the decision to include India as an observer to the Eurodrone Mali multi-altitude long-endurance program managed by the OCCAR, which is another step forward in the growing strength of our partnership. On cooperation in the third countries, it said they hailed the launch of Indo-France Indo-Pacific Triangular Development Cooperation, aiming to support cooperation and SDG focused projects from third countries. The two leaders, it said, welcomed the partnership between Pro, ProParco and Indian microfinance institutions concerned for an equity agreement of the 13 million euros in the areas of financial inclusion. It said both countries welcome the inclusion of 10 Indian startups at the French Startup Incubator Station. Supreme Court slams poll freebies. Are we creating a class of parasites? Meanwhile, top court yet to take a decision on plea against freebies, coming down heavily on announcement of freebies by the governments and political parties before election. Supreme Court asked, "Are we not creating a class of parasites that freebies are incentivizing people from working in states like Maharashtra, drying up the labor force?" Main victims are the have-nots, the poor people, homeless. Unfortunately, the cause of homelessness is not addressed. That's the least priority in this country. Compassion, I'm sorry to say, is the only for the rich and not for the poor. Justice Gavai took exception to the submission that compassion is only for the rich and cautioned him not to make political speeches. Don't make a speech at Ramlila Maidan in this court. In court, restrict yourself to your argument. If you are espousing the cause of someone, restrict it to that. Don't make unnecessary allegations. Don't make a political speech here. We will not allow a court hall to be converted into a political platform. The petitioner said, "That was not my intent. I didn't mean that." How do you say compassion is shown only for the rich? Advocate Prashant Bhusar, who was appearing for another petitioner, sought to explain that submission has been made because some of the shelters have been removed for beautification of the area. Justice Gavai said an affidavit filed in the matter mentioned the facilities to be provided, so rather than promoting them to be a part of the mainstream of society by contributing to the development of the nation, are we not creating a class of parasites? Unfortunately, because of these freebies who come on the anvil of elections, Ladli Behna, and some other schemes, people are not willing to work. They are getting free ration. They are getting amount without any work. Why should they work? Bhushan tried to intervene. Justin Gavai said, "We appreciate your concern for them, but wouldn't there be a better way to make them part of the mainstream society and contribute to the development of the nation? There is hardly anybody in this country who would not want to work if there is some work. You must be having only one-sided knowledge. I come from an agricultural family. Because of the freebies in Maharashtra, which were announced prior to elections, the agriculturalists are not getting laborers." Flight to Bangkok, how son of former minister sent Maharashtra into a tailspin. Former minister was gone only for 4 hours, but by the time his flight landed back at the Pune airport, he has been reported missing. Pune police was scrambling to investigate the possible kidnapping, and his father had moved the state machinery. Silent revolution drop in unschooled mothers from 47 to 28% in 8 years. A quiet revolution in education has been unfolding across rural India. According to ASA 24 released last month, there has been significant transformation in maternal education levels over the past 8 years. Year after they moved in, Surat family homeless, official site law. Tughlaqabad Fort protected areas physical demarcation to be completed. Tata Power ranked among top 10 in Smart Grid Index 2024. Alimony maintenance can be granted even when marriage is void under Hindu Marriage Act, Supreme Court. The top court took an exception to the expression illegitimate wife or faithful mistress used by the Bombay High Court. The use of such words is misogynistic and very inappropriate. A spouse whose marriage has been declared void under Section 11 of the 1955 Act is entitled to seek permanent alimony or maintenance from the spouse. The top court, however, added whether such a relief or permanent alimony can be granted or not always depends on the facts of each case and conduct of the parties. On the question of grant of interim maintenance under the Hindu Marriage Act, the judge said, even if the court comes to a prima facie conclusion that the marriage between the parties is void or voidable pending the top final disposal of the proceedings, the court is not precluded from granting maintenance provided the conditions mentioned in the section 24 are satisfied. Reference arose from conflicting decisions for grant of alimony in such marriages. Taking exception to this, the Supreme Court said calling the wife of the marriage declared as void as an illegitimate wife is very inappropriate. It affects the dignity of concerned women. Unfortunately, Bombay High Court went to the extent of using the words illegitimate wife. Shockingly, in paragraph 24, the High Court described such wife as faithful mistress. It is pertinent to note that High Court has not used similar adjectives in the case of husbands of void marriages. RSS gets a swanky Delhi headquarter, 3 towers, 300 rooms, solar panels and auditorium. Modi to CEOs in France, India becoming biggest center of diversification, it is right time to invest. One more killed in jumbo attacks in Kerala. High Court acquits man, a natural sex with wife without consent is not an offence. Wife gave dying declaration, man also convicted of rape culpable, homicide. Marital rape exception is part of the provision that was amended in 2013 and would prevail over the older law. On the culpable homicide charge, the High Court expressed doubts on the dying declaration. High Court stated that while the trial court relied on the dying declaration, the statement did not in fact state that injuries were caused due to intercourse. The executive magistrate who was testified had told the court that he was told by the deceased separately. The High Court said that dying declaration must not need corroboration to be considered as an admissible or evidence. High Court deemed the man's conviction under IPC Section 304 perverse and quashed it. The learned trial court has not recorded any finding how the offence under Section 304 of IPC is attracted to the present facts of the case and proved by the prosecution. Still has convicted the appellant under Section 344 IPC, which is nothing but perversity and patent illegality. High Court relied on Supreme Court's ruling in Navtej Singh Johar, which decriminalized homosexuality under Section 377 and noted that following the ruling, if an unnatural offence is committed between consenting partners, Section 377 IPC is not made out. Supreme Court pulls up ED. PMLA concept is not to keep a person in jail. Bluebird take to the skies. F-35 Lightning II US. The fifth generation fighter is considered backbone of the US Air Force developed by Lockheed Martin. It is known as for its air superiority, ground attack capabilities and electronic warfare. It is one of the most advanced fighter jets. Software and hardware in upgrades including AI-powered combat systems have been a game changer. Sukhoi 57E is a fifth-generation stealth fighter developed by Russian company Sukhoi. It is considered as the rival of the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Lightning II of the US. AI-assisted combat systems, sensor fusion, and electronic warfare capabilities. F-16 Lightning Falcon is a multi-role fighter manufactured by Lockheed Martin. It is known for its agility, speed, and advanced avionics. Embraer 390 Millennium Brazil. Embraer C390 Millennium. Embraer is a military transport aircraft built by Embraer, designed to replace older turboprop plane. It offers high speed, greater payload, and advanced avionics. JAS 39 Gripen Sweden, Airbus 330 MRTT used by 15 nations, multi-role tanker transport, and Airbus 440 Atlas Germany. So that's all for today. See you in the next one.